Hi, my name is Donovan Evans. Some people call me Photodono, or just Dono. I'm an award-winning photo artist, and I've got over 25 years of experience with making things with my camera. Lately, I've been obsessed with the Milky Way, around since 2016. The Self-Assignment Photo Challenge is basically, its primary goal is to inspire you to take more photos with subjects that might be outside your comfort zone. Now, you kind of might be thinking with words like assignment and challenge, they might be intimidating, but it's not. Don't panic. By exploring these new techniques and equipment choices, you'll increase your photography skills. These self-assignments are not a contest or a judged event. It's an opportunity to share and inspire each other. We'll be meeting online to go over the images in a round-robin discussion about the inspiration of the photo. We'll talk about the composition, the equipment, and everything else. I'll also review the editing process for my submissions as well, too. Also, print sales and gratuities help me pay the bills and put food on the table. Remember, I have a family to feed, and I'd rather have them eat something other than me. Please drop by my tip jar at paypal.com/paypalme/Photodono. Think of it as buying me a cup of coffee or beer. Beer. For additional updates on classes, please feel free to stop by and check out my website. Here you'll find out a little bit more about my work as well. Also, another way to help out is if you can stop by my saatchi.com/Photodono page. Here you can browse some of the current prints and artworks I've been working on. You'll find originals or one-of-a-kind artworks here. There's also another option for canvas and fine art prints. You can find out when I'll post new work when you click the link to follow me on Saatchi. The added benefit is to help increase my visibility to other art collectors. Every little bit helps, and anything you could do would be most appreciated. For a list of classes I'm teaching at Johnson Photo Imaging, stop by jpiphoto.com and click on About Classes, and you'll find out more about what's going on there. And if you're in Bradenton, Florida, stop by Johnson Photo Imaging, and we'll be glad to help you with your photographic needs. The store is located on the Gulf Coast of Florida. I also post about the classes on Facebook and Instagram at JPI in Focus. Some of you discovered me through Meetup. I also run another Meetup page called the Low Light Photo Group. If you haven't already, please stop by and sign up, and you'll get updates when the next self-assignment is. The next thing that's coming up that might be of interest to some of you, I'm going to do the Low Light Photo Group meeting. That'll be next month on September 29th at 7 o'clock. As I said before, the intentional camera movement is basically when the camera is moved for exposure for a creative or artistic effect. This causes the image points to move across the recording sensor, producing apparent streaking in the resulting image. It's kind of it's like as Larry pointed out to me a few weeks ago, it's a very addictive process, and it's really not that hard to do. It just requires a little bit of your own creative juices, as it were. It does require a little bit of expertise on your camera, where you have to understand a little bit about shutter speed and how that affects the motion blur in your pictures. But in essence, motion blur is basically how quickly you can open and close the shutter for these things. So what you're trying to do, if you can put it on the letter S, you can then change it to a long exposure, such as like 1/4 of a second. Typically, most pictures are taken about 60th or faster of a second. Sometimes we'll do a little bit longer, depending upon certain types of equipment you might have. Moving the camera steadily and evenly during the exposure is what you're trying to do. You don't necessarily want to go loop-de-loop with it, but that's what I did on some of mine. So, remember, these are just guidelines, not something that's up there. And you got to remember, the final look is up to you. It's an abstract technique. if you really, really want to dig deeper into this thing, I mean, there's a lot of folks out there, but the best ones I think that I found out there was with dealing with these guys, John and Lisa Miro. They're at Olympus Educators. They have a plethora of images to check out for about dealing with them. I love their particular thing about shake, twist, zoom, pan, because it breaks it down to this, doing a little bit of a camera shake, twisting the camera, turning it left and right, and then zooming, or moving into zoom while you're shooting, and panning. The images that you see right here are basically panning examples that they provided on their website, which is really cool. This is something I've done, not what I would call successfully, but I certainly have done it quite a bit with a lot of pictures. And it's something that I like motion blur because it gives a much more dynamic response to everything. This is where they're dealing with what they're calling their shake on the top part and their twist, where they're turning the camera to the left or to the right very quickly. Again, these guys are doing a little bit longer exposures, up to about a second for most of these things. Again, as I said, you can check out some of their stuff over at Learn and Support, getolympus.com. This is where they're dealing with their zoom as well. The one on the bottom, though, is more like a zoom with a little bit of twist in there. So you can combine some of these things. It doesn't have to be just one thing, and you can kind of play around with all that stuff. Intentional camera movement is a pretty straightforward thing. It's nothing really that complicated to do. It does require that you kind of plan out a little bit what your image is. The best way I've ever described, the best description I've heard about this stuff, it's kind of like doing a Jackson Pollock painting. If you haven't seen one of those things, it looks like it's painting that's dripped all over the canvas. And then, yeah, it might look random to everybody who's looking at the stuff, much like when you're looking at pictures like this, but it's not random. What it is it's a little deliberate drop of where the paint's going to go. These guys are not just randomly doing this. They're looking for certain effects, certain views when they're looking at this stuff. Can you do it by accident? Of course you can. And there's plenty of instances where that is. But this is where you're doing it deliberately without making it as an accident, making an intentional attempt to do all this stuff. There are filters that can help you out with these types of things. Filters are what they usually refer to as for like dealing with protective filters. Protective filters are usually what most people think when they think about filters, where they help kind of protect the lens element. But what if you want to do some long exposures during the day? Well, sometimes if you do that, you're going to get pictures that are washed out. There are neutral density filters that you can put on your lenses to help compensate for some of that stuff. Neutral density filters are an invaluable tool to a lot of landscape photographers because you can do some amazing creativity between stopped action and motion blur. This is an example that I did. A shot of the water running by the cypress out there at Hillsborough State Park. And you can see the shutter speed there is at 1/2000th of a second. Now I would put the neutral density filter on there, and now I'm stopping it down to about a second. So you can see there's a dramatic difference, and it gives it a much more unique look to the whole entire thing. I was using a variable neutral density filter on this one, which allows me to basically turn how dark the lens gets, because that's what a neutral density filter does. It darkens, it stops the amount of light that's coming in from there. So if you look at the one on the bottom right there, it's very dark, very opaque, which means it's very hard to see through if you're trying to focus. So you got to focus before you put it on there. A variable one like this one right here allows you to actually turn it to the left or to the right, so you can increase the density or the opacity of the particular one. They come in a variety of stops. The one I use, as I said, is a variable one. It does what they call an 8 to 2/3 stops on this particular thing. What that means is that it's stopping the amount of light. Whenever time you stop light, for those who don't know, you're doubling or half the amount of light on all this stuff. All right. So anyway, what if you have an odd lens or two? Well, an odd lens or two, it's not that big of a deal. An odd lens or two, like this one right here from Tamron, the 15 to 30, it has a tool up on there, so you can't actually screw anything to the front of it. So what you end up doing is you end up getting these little adapters so that you can put on top of it and then use other things on there like polarizers and filters. A circular polarizer is kind of like a neutral density filter in the fact that it stops a little bit of light. But its primary tool is to help reduce surface glare or remove glare and help bring in some of the sky sky details for really significantly bright skies. Jake Glemm on YouTube actually has a wonderful quick little video that he did with this thing. So you can see here it's with a filter, without a filter, and then he basically does a little of a wipe showing you with the filter. And you can see that's a pretty dynamic difference by using a polarizer. You can't really do a lot of long exposures in broad daylight with a polarizer, though. The neutral density filter would be the much more useful tool when it comes to this type of stuff. And again, a tripod's going to be a useful tool for when you're doing longer exposure, especially in daylight with neutral density filters. A tripod lets you photograph in low light. It also allows you to do long exposures. It does increase stability. A lot of people think, well, I've got image stabilization that helps out. It does help, but it's not perfect. A tripod does give you better pictures and also helps you to frame and find the shots you think. When you get a tripod, what you're doing is you're basically setting where you're going to be putting the camera, and you basically have to think about where you want to put it so you can actually think about the composition. That's the nice thing about using with a tripod. Not only is it going to help you steady your images, but it would also help you keep everything, help you keep thinking in a much more creative and a compositional way. 9 out of 10, well, most photographers, this is where a lot of them kind of fall short with a lot of their photography is the composition. Composition is probably the most important element of any picture. You can have a really, really, really bad exposure, but have a great photo, but you could also have a bad photo with a really great exposure. So, you know, it kind of goes both ways. Keep in mind, it's always nice to have the nice tools to help you out because the nice tools do allow you a greater sense of flexibility. A decent tripod will be about starting about 200 to 350, all the way up to about $500, depending on how much you want to carry / for stability wise. And keep in mind, not all tripods come with heads. You have to sometimes buy the heads separately. And if you like shooting with really longer lenses, you can get gimbals for that as well too. Those are just some of the tools that I use, especially when I'm working with long exposures and stuff like that. Now, does anybody have any questions on any of that stuff before we keep moving on here? Let's see, did I lose any?
I would just offer a suggestion. If you're going out to buy a tripod, I would say you want to get something that's so you don't have to bend over to look into it. And you may not want one with a center column because it limits the ability to get it down low and stable. You can only get it down so far to whatever the tube is. So when I buy a next one, it won't have the extension tube on it.
Yeah. Well, there's some tripods which you can get like from MePhoto and Manfrotto, where you can take out the extension tube, you know, the column where the tripod is, and it's actually a very, very small tube that you would put in there so it doesn't stick out. So that way you can still put your heads on there if you want to. But if you can get one without the head and you can mount it directly on there, that would give you the smallest amount of distance for having to put it closer to the ground if you want to do that type of stuff. Keep in mind I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'd say I'd forgotten about getting the shorter extension tube that usually comes with it. You know, it comes big, probably about 1 foot or 2 foot long.
Right.
And I know you can get the smaller one. I forgot about that.
Yeah, there's a couple of things like out there like that stuff. It's excuse me. So there's some interesting things that you can do to help maintain some of that type of stuff. Like I said, it's up to you guys to kind of experiment and see how all this goes and from there. Now, sure, nobody's got any questions, because if not, we're gonna kind of dive in, because as I said, intentional camera movement is not what I would call the hardest thing to do, but it's certainly not the easiest thing to succeed at, because as I said, it's very subjective. And, you know, and as I said, sometimes you do it as an accident, but if you're starting to do it as a forethought, it's really useful if you can think about what you want to do. And that's usually where you get some of the more interesting results, like the Millers that were doing with Olympus there. All right, I'm gonna move mosey on. So I got Larry's and I got Aphrodite, and I don't know if I got Nancy or Susan's pictures. So if you guys don't have anything, that's fine. Let me know if you do. If you can, just go ahead and email them to me at photodono@mac.com. If you don't, then that's fine. It's not a big deal. I'll put my email in the chat here, so you guys can go ahead and send it to that. Got the program right up in front of me and I can't see it, which means my glasses suck. All right, well, I'm going to start it off with some of the things that I did, and then we can go around from there. And we'll go then that I know I got Larry's. We can go through, and then we can go to Aphrodite. Now, one of the things that I was encouraging people to do is to not only give us the settings like aperture, shutter, and ISO, but what type of camera system you were using, and also what lens you were using, and approximately what was the focal length that you were using when you were doing these things. And if you can, make some notes about some of the lighting, because this helps us, or at least helps me when I'm trying to help you guys do a little bit of a critique on some of the stuff. Now, as I bring mine up, you guys are more than welcome to jump in. You can unmute yourself and make any comments or things of that nature. It's quite up to you. Now, I know sometimes on the back end of Zoom, sometimes the pictures are kind of wonky on that. So hopefully it looks okay on your end. This is something that I shot with an Olympus Pen F. I shot it with their 75 millimeter, which is just a fixed focal length lens. So it's just 75 millimeters at 1.8. And that's what I shot it at 1.8. I did this for about a second. But one of the clever things with Olympus is what they did was they came up with something that was called Live Comp. Live Comp allows the camera to actually keep adding additional light to it. So this is actually one, instead of me zooming around and not doing the twisty things, I'm just basically moving the camera to the left and to the right, kind of slowly back and forth for about 10 seconds. And this was shot at the downtown Bradenton Riverwalk. For this particular one. And this is what you can see, and you can't really see anything else, but the bridge is behind it. That's where all those little sparkly lights are there. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Hang on one second. So right up in here is where the bridge is right here, and all the rest are just regular lights that are just kind of streaking by as I'm moving the camera to the left or to the right. So technically, if you with the Live Comp, which was 10 seconds handheld, and each exposure was about a second, then basically that's what it was going on. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can get this one. I hope I got him. And so this is basically the one that I did right here. Again, as I said, the Bradenton Riverwalk. One of the things I like about this one for me personally is I like how the lines are dividing up everything. You got the nice white lines going across the top and bottom, and you got all this nice red, yellow light there. The only thing that kind of distracts me in the picture is this right here. I might actually try to crop it later on, but I left it in here just to show you the whole thing in its entirety. But I really like the way this kind of morphed as I was doing this stuff. The other thing that's really cool about Live Composite is that you can actually see this happen as you move the camera to the left or to the right. This was actually caused by a much more brighter light source next to me that was shining across the water. It's a lot of fun if you guys get a chance to try some of this stuff out. Now, again, you don't have to have even though I was shooting with an Olympus, you don't have to have an Olympus to do these types of pictures. You can easily do these things without anything else other than just, again, changing the focal length. So this was a 20-second picture, just straight out of the camera. And this was shot at the Tampa Riverwalk. And this was, of course, you can see it's the Stars Center. And this basically is what I did was I shot for 20 seconds. I started at 12 millimeters and I went halfway, stopped. And again, I can't see it. I'm just eyeballing about to 27. And then I moved it all the way to 40 because that was the focal length of the particular lens I was using. Again, I'm using an Olympus system, which is micro 4/3. So, if you're using full frame, this would be equivalent to 24 to an 80 2.8 piece of glass. The thing that's really cool, what I did was something like deliberately was leaving the f-stop at f22. The reason being is because I'm trying to get the pinpoints of light. They're like here and right here, and that also happened in here. because every time you use the larger f-stop number, you get these really cool little starburst effects on very bright light sources. You got to have a lot of contrast to make it kind of pop out. So that's one of the things that's kind of cool to kind of play around with. At least I like that, and it works out really well. The other thing too is when I'm doing long exposures, you don't really need a high ISO number as a general rule for this type of stuff, because you got plenty of light, because I'm letting enough light in with the 20 seconds. I'm just getting a lot of motion blur because I'm actually zooming back, or zooming forward, I should say, in order to change the aspect ratio on this a little bit, or the dimensions, excuse me, on this. Any questions? What do you think, Larry?
That's great. I just didn't know exactly how you got the Straz Center so clear in there, but I now that you talk through it, I understand it completely. There, it's just a matter of stop and just a few seconds, and then move it again and stop again.
Exactly. That just basically.
Yeah, and the F-22 to get the starbursts are great. I don't remember, as you look at some of the ones that I did, I don't remember some of the settings. If I know the camera that I had, some of them were shot with my Nikon D5500,
right.
But we'll get to that later. But
yeah,
that's great. That's a great picture.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, when I get to what I'm going to do is also going to talk about some of the edits. So you'll see some of the original pictures before I did I did edit them, not to remove anything, but to kind of clean up some of the shadow details, and also to do a little bit of cropping and stuff like this. There was a little bit more stuff over here, but I just didn't really care for it. But I just like this particular crop because it really fills it in. And again, you see a lot of that stuff with a lot of photographers. They don't really fill in the whole entire frame. There's a number of reasons why, but mainly it's just to help if you do any kind of cropping later on, especially if you're switching from micro four thirds size sensor or your full frame sensor or crop sensors in order to get some sort of 8x10 or 11x14 where you end up doing a little bit of cropping here and there. All right, let's go on to the next one here. So this would be my last one. Well, no, next to the last one right here. So on this particular one, again, I'm using the 12 to 40 on here. Now I am using the live comp. So this was basically, each picture was a second. Well, exposure was about a second, but I did it for 20 seconds. Think of it as even though it's 1 second for each one, for each exposure, it was 20 seconds for the total exposure time as I'm moving the zoom lens back and forth on these things. Since it's 20 seconds and I'm moving in and I'm constantly zooming back and forth. Now I'm not holding this by hand. I have to have a tripod. There's the same thing with on that stars. I had to have it on the tripod. So that's what I ended up doing with all this stuff, is I put it on a tripod. And then once I got the shot, lined up the composition, and this is pretty much the whole entire thing. There's no cropping at all. You get to see a little, you can see it. The only thing I did do that was different that kind of said, I liked the pyramid that was, or the triangle shape that was coming along here, but actually the image was up. This is the upside down version, which I prefer much more, which I think is a much more interesting one, because these are all the lights on the ceiling and they're coming streaking towards. It kind of reminds me of a Star Trek or Star Wars kind of thing, which I kind of like, So I think that's pretty, at least for me, I like that. I think that's kind of cool. And like I said, one of the things I'm always trying to pay attention to is the shape and forms that I'm creating with the pictures, whether or not it's shooting pictures of people or landscape or anything else. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pay attention to what's being created in the picture. I'm trying to think about what I want in there in order to get it. Sometimes when I take a picture, I don't really see everything when I do it, because what happens is I'm letting my brain, kind of like what Henry Cartier-Bresson said, that decisive moment. If you've been doing it for a while and if you got the technique down, or at least mostly down, then you start, those little things just start percolating in your brain. The next thing you know, you're just shooting a little bit better as each time you do it. His quote is, your first 10,000 pictures are not so good. I think in French it was not, it was kind of oops, hang on one second. I think it was kind of more of a vulgar word, I think, but he wrote a 40-page essay about this whole entire thing. And if you guys get a chance to check out Henri Cartier-Bresson, I would definitely recommend it. All right. Any questions about any of the stuff about what I did, or if you got any comments about the composition, I would be more than glad to listen to it. It's fine. I've heard it all, trust me.
I'm just wondering.
I think it's.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, these 3 pictures were taken at night. Do you do that to improve the contrast?
No. The only reason they were at night is because this was actually kind of at the blue hour. So it's not quite night yet, but it was fairly dark. But no, it has nothing to do with the contrast. In fact, my next one here, it actually was not done at night. It was done on my tabletop with lots of light.
Okay.
And stuff like that. So when I'm trying, so it doesn't have to be at night, but night does help out with the contrast a bit, but it doesn't have to be. It could be shooting, and I think Larry's done most of those you've done during the day. Didn't you, Larry, yours that are coming up?
I don't remember. I'd have to look. I started it with zooming on Christmas lights. So, several years ago. And now I've got to some that are daylight because I wanted to get the cloud motion.
Yeah. So for instance, I actually did this with my cell phone. Then you can see this was the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And the cell phone allows you to shoot up to 2 seconds if you want to. And so that's what I did for 2 seconds. Since the cell phone or the iPhone, I should say, it does a little jiggery pokery with some of the editing in there. So I did have to go in there and have to clean it up just a little bit to kind of bring in some of the colors and the tones. But for the most part, this is pretty much it. This was actually the tablecloth. And all I did was I just moved the camera side to the left and to the right just a little bit during that 2 seconds. And I just tried to keep the camera as steady as I could as I did that, as I was hand holding it. It doesn't, it's a little bit, it drives me crazy that it's a little bit crooked. I've done some more edits with it later on where I fixed some of the crookedness of it, but that's just me. Now I think in the zoom page, this looks a little bit more pale than it should be. There's a little bit more detail on this one right here and right here, but it's still all in all, it reminds me of an old Indian basket. I mean, Indian, or one of those, I guess south of the border, carpets and rugs and stuff like that. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that type of stuff. But yes, but to answer your question, no, it doesn't have to be at night. It could be in broad daylight for all that was. In fact, some of those pictures you saw of the Millers is that at the beginning, that's all they did was they shot theirs during the day. They used things called neutral density filters to help them stop some of the light so they can get a little bit longer exposures. So you can do that. You'll see a lot of that stuff, especially where people are shooting waterfalls, things like that. It's a lot of fun to do. And yeah, like that picture of the tree that I showed you not too long ago, that particular tree was shot with a neutral density filter. So I can get, that was in broad daylight, so I can get that long exposure.
Okay, thanks.
Not a problem. Did I answer all your questions?
Yep, thank you.
All right. All right, Aphrodite, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Hi, how are you?
Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm trying to make sure that, because the only time I've seen the only time I've seen the word Aphrodite, of course, is in the comic books and Greek mythology class.
Yes, so. I
know. Well, my name's Donovan, so I get people ask me, is it Donovan's Reef, or do I get the Sunshine Superman joke almost all the time. So it's like, it's like my parents were like going, well, we just like Donovan. No, you were just a bunch of hippies is what you were.
Actually, it was my grandma's name. So
that's really cool.
We follow the tradition. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I was tickled pink about how you did this. You want to tell people how you did that?
Well, actually, I don't know if it was a cheat or I could not find my battery to recharge my camera. So I almost wasn't able to contribute in the class, but it ended up, I found my battery charger. I got a new one. I loaded my camera. So I didn't have time to actually go out and do this. So I had a big picture of a forest that I had gone to during a yoga retreat a few years ago. So I uploaded the picture on my camera, and I used my ISO 200 on my Olympus OMD, used a shutter of 2.5 seconds. And my aperture was, I believe it was f/22. And what I did was, as I kept the shutter down, I twisted the camera back and forth, up and down, actually, like a circular motion. And I was able to get that effect. This was a forest of trees with bushes coming, bursting out in reds and yellows. So I liked that fact that I was able to grab some of that red and mix it in with the yellow. And it really came out pretty well, I think. I don't know. What do you think, Donovan?
Well, the thing I like about it is that you said you shot this from your screen. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I really like the effect on that. I think that worked out really well. It's a novel way to approach it because, again, you don't have to necessarily. It was what they call it, that spark of ingenuity to go out there and try to do it, but not necessarily have to step outside to do it. That's perfectly fine. That works out really, really well for me.
Good,
and again,
good.
I love the texture that was created within it, and the way the lines are moving with the trees and stuff like that. That's really, really cool. Wow.
Thank you. It was my first attempt.
As Larry said to me earlier, this could be a very addicting process for this type of
Yes,
stuff.
it is. Yeah. I'm going on a trip in a couple of weeks, so I'm looking forward to bringing my camera and trying this out while I'm outside, actually.
Now, was this one, I guess this was you said there's a photo of leaves on a lake, is that right?
Yeah, they were floating on a lake, different colored leaves. It was the same day that I shot the other picture. So I did that in a circular motion, same way on my computer screen. I sort of like this also. I like that swirly effect, and the reflection of the way the leaves are just pulled out of form, and sort of stretched out on the water like that.
Yeah, again, it's a nice sense of the composition. Again, I liked how you cropped them because it's not quite 2:3, but it's more like a 16:9 aspect ratio for both of them, like a widescreen thing. So that works out really well. At least the way you've got it presented here.
Well, my screen is a wide screen, so that's probably how you see that, the crop, the 16:9. Yeah.
Yeah, I still say I got to type on there. I must have been kind of sleepy when I was typing this up. I noticed I put you down at 2.5 on your f-stop, and you said it was f/22, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's okay. No worries.
I'll fix it in the video. It'll be fine.
No worries. Thank you, Donovan. This was really a great assignment. Thank you.
Oh, it's cool. I really hope you guys continue on with this, because I would love to see people even if you're not doing it. I mean, if you like this assignment a lot, and if you guys want to do, when I do the next one, you guys can always check us out at on Meetup at the Brain Photo Group, and you can always upload the pictures there. If I see something new, I'll try to make a comment or two, but if you want to share them again at the next meeting, then that's fine too. As I said, the topics that I do, they're not mandatory. They're just hopefully to get your everyone's brains moving so that they can go out and try something different,
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. All right, I gotta get out of here and go to Larry's page here. So bear with me 1 second. Oop. I'll show you what I got. That way I can show you what I got, Larry.
Okay.
Give me 1 sec here. Let me pull them up. I think I saw Glidden just pop in. Hopefully I didn't kick him out.
Yeah, he's there.
How are
Hey,
you?
Glidden.
Oh, there you are. All right. Let's go to. All right, there we go. Yeah, I don't think I have. Let's see where there we go. So hopefully you guys can see this screen right here. And let me make it bigger. Biggin it. So this was one of the pictures you sent me, Larry, and this is the one I got two pictures that I could find real quick before, so hopefully these are the two that you'd sent. This was really cool. I love the abstract fiery look of the whole thing. So how did you make this one?
That was on my Google phone. And actually, if you go to the second picture of that, you had it up a little bit ago. Mm-hmm. The red part is a Coke can. And, I was playing with it, trying different shutter speeds and movement in order to get something. And so I wanted to throw this one in so people would know where it came from. And then you get to the other one, which I liked better because it showed, more of the motion and how it was more abstract and whatnot. And that was just, like we said before, it was just a serendipity kind of a thing. I was sitting there in the motorhome and looking at over that, and I said, "Can I do this with my cell phone?" And I fooled around with it and said, "Move that." Oh, look, that looks good. So, I didn't plan that much. It's just that I wanted to try and get something on a cell phone. And so I did.
That's really cool. Again, I think that's, it's really, to me, again, one of the things that's really cool with sometimes with photography, and as well as having that creative eye, is taking some of the more mundane things and not necessarily amplifying, but giving them a new context, a new way to kind of look at stuff, so that's the kind of stuff I like a lot, especially when at least that's my idea, or at least part of my concepts when I'm working on some of my stuff is to try to, make something that hopefully nobody has seen before, or at least in a different take that makes it more unique to everybody else. So yeah, I like this type of stuff. And I to be honest with you, I like the idea of this one right here, but I really like the previous one. I just think that one is really awesome.
And like I said, I kind of started there to get to, I'm pointing at the screen, to that one because I really like the way that one came out a whole lot better. And it was, I don't remember what I had on my Google phone, but I know that I used, because it was a Google phone, I was able to use another app called Open Camera, which allowed me to change the ISO so I could lower it way down, and then that gave me the shutter speed high enough that I could, or low enough that I could do this. So it's just an experiment, because you probably can't replicate that again. Exactly. I mean, you can go out to a great vista and take the same picture that 10,000 people have taken. Okay, what's the point? Now you could do something a little different.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of the fun thing, because you can take something like this, something as simple as doing something like that, and then when you go on your next trip or wherever you're going, yeah, you can. There's nothing wrong with taking the typical picture of some of the place you go to, but then you could always throw something like this into the mix. You just never know what you can get until you try it.
Right.
And it's one of the nice things.
Yeah. I always say, take the grand picture so you have your own copy, but then start experimenting.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But
cool. Anybody else? Larry, did you say you have did you have additional ones you wanted to share too?
yeah, I could bring them up on
Well, why don't you go
right
bring yours up? Go and bring yours up when you get a chance. Let me know when they're ready. Hey, Glidden, are you sharing tonight, or
okay.
Did you have time?
No, it's wait until we'll talk later on the phone.
That's fine.
An idea of my last 4 weeks. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure where everybody's at, but just kind of give you a heads up. I'm in Bradenton, Florida. Glidden's in New Mexico. Larry's in Vermont, so I'm not sure where everybody's hailing from, but yeah. So yeah, it's just a lot of fun, just doing all this stuff. All right, let me see if I'm going to go back and go back to the keynote, and let's go back to share. Uh-oh, I've lost it already. It's gone forever. Oh, there it is. I found it. Okay. All right, let's grab my annotate. So I'm going to jump ahead and go back to this. And then Larry says he's got, like he said, he's got a few more. So I'm going to jump ahead of this stuff right here. So I want to talk a little bit about the edits and stuff like that. So this is another one that I shot. Again, this is more of the zoom method instead, just one method of movement. Again, I'm having this particular image on a tripod. Okay. So to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like before I started doing it, this is it right here. So this is the image that was captured in that particular thing. Now, if you notice, some of the highlights are blown out right here, but that's fine because what I'm doing is I'm shooting in RAW. Now, that's Olympus RAW, mind you, but that's still RAW files. And you can see on the histogram here, there's a little bit, not too much of a gray areas, lots of blacks, certainly a fair amount of whites because that's what it's reading, but it's not what I call blown out. Now, most people might see this and just kind of poo-poo it and that's it, I'm moving on, that type of thing. But, I really liked how this looked overall. And the fact that it was a little bit in between the exposures of, between the dark grays and the brights, it gave me a little bit of a wiggle room to kind of move into as far as that goes. So my initial response when I do any of this stuff is I basically hit auto. Let's see how it kind of tweaks that a little bit, meaning it's tweaking some of the highlights and stuff like that. I think right now I'm looking for, because I didn't see it in the further, there's the group I passed up again, the clarity and the dehaze and stuff like that, because that's another really one of my favorite tricks to do is to kind of play around with that because it not only exaggerates some of the contrast, and I'm just looking for that pleasing effect overall to get some of this in there. Now, I really like how, again, the lower half and the top half are going through there, but the issue is that it's not quite satisfying to me with the crop. This part right here is kind of bugging me, this part over here. So basically, I'm keeping the original aspect ratio that I shot, which is 4:3 aspect ratio, which is the size of my sensor. And I'm basically just cropping in a little bit. You can see the other words in the background back there. It says Tampa Bay River Center right there. So the idea is, you can see all that stuff, but the idea is, you don't need to have those other words. But I really like the way River now is just jumping out in front of me. Again, this is one of those zoom things. And you can see I'm just playing around with the highlights, trying to, see if I can find something, a happy little medium. So I'm not necessarily blowing the details out, but I want to make sure that I'm not distracting you too much with the word river because I like how everything points to that word. It really makes it kind of sing. So the next thing I do is I'm going to throw it into Photoshop. I was using a 12 to 40 lens. It's fairly sharp, but the issue is with that particular, this particular effect, sometimes things can be a little bit on the soft side. So I just been using Topaz on some of my pictures to basically help increase some of the sharpness and the detail in some of the stuff. Now, I didn't do anything really fancy. I just kind of let the system do it. You can always do some additional editing over here, but I really just let it do its thing because I thought it was pretty good on its own. They give you a little bit of a slider to go back and forth on it, which I think worked out really well. And once I did that, of course, I just dumped it back into Photoshop and just took a look at it from there.
I think I'm ready.
All right, let me finish this up and then we'll go into yours. So the idea is right here is that it's okay still, but I'm not quite there yet. So what happens when I'm done with here in Photoshop, it gets dumped back into Lightroom as an additional file. So I'll save it, and what it does is it creates its own TIFF file and dumps it into Lightroom. So I go back to Lightroom. There it is right now. And then I can do some additional edits. And again, I just auto just to kind of get an idea, but then I just really bumped up the clarity and the texture a bit just to give it that little more of that, what I would call like a cyberpunk type of look. You know, I really like that type of effect. It almost reminds me of a Blade Runner episode now. And then of course I export it out on everything for here. The final result is what you see here. And that's the thing that I was, this is the type of stuff when I'm looking at things, that's what I'm trying to find. Something that's different, something that's out of the ordinary, but something that also hopefully catches your eye, this type of stuff. I also post things on stock images. So this is something that you could easily use in some stock imagery. There's plenty of things which when you do stuff like that, you got to give them sometimes some space there to put extra words on there. Now, this may not be good for that because it's got a particular thing on there, but I'll throw it up there, maybe on Pixabay where it'll be free. People can use it to their heart's content, that type of thing. But the idea is you can use, it's kind of a cool thing to kind of try out. And again, to experiment, see what's happening on this whole entire stuff. And maybe this would inspire somebody else to go out and maybe try some stuff. All right, so let me click out of here and then we'll go.
Yeah, you'll have to allow me to share my screen.
Yeah, I'll be right there. 1 sec.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to get back to my Zoom screen. All right, so we should be, Larry. All right, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay.
Is it working?
I don't know. I just hit share, so.
You got to pick the screen, right?
Yeah. Now let me go back to.
Oh my God, after that, you're in New York? Oof. I've had people as far as like from Australia, New Zealand on these things. That takes a dedication on some of these guys.
and remember, we got a lady from Great Britain one time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I just moved into the city. I lived in a borough of New York for years, all my life, and just moved into the city, and I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, cool. All right, Larry.
Yeah, let me see if I can get this thing bigger.
You didn't biggen it?
This was one of the first ones that I took. I gotta move something out of the way so I can make that bigger. Here we go. I was in Tucson in 2015. Went to a camera club there, and a guy talked about zooming your lens. So I did that, and it was near Christmas time, and we had our in the coach the picture or the tree was up. So I just took that and just wiggled it around and said, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then kind of forgot about it. And I can't remember where these things were. It's just different, trying different things. And
I like the bokeh that you got on that previous one, because that's what it looks like, a little bit of bokeh.
That's very cool. Very,
Yeah.
very cool.
It kind of
Wow.
reminds
Yeah,
me of the 2001 Space Odyssey where he falls into the monolith. But that's really cool.
And yeah, this was a light of some sort, and I just spun around the thing in there, and that might have even been to Corning Glass when we went to that museum there. You know, and I didn't have any particular idea about, oh, I want this composition or that composition. It was like, oh, there's some lights there. Let me try and do something and see what happens. So
Right.
it's really, quote, abstract, because it just has nothing on there. I don't remember that one. Now, on this was a zoom on some lights, and I think one of the things that maybe I've learned, or I suspect anyhow, is it doesn't help me to point to, well, maybe it does there on my screen, like where the big blobs are there. I think that's where the zoom ended, but the shutter was still open. So you get that extra little light bulb on there, and the same where
Right.
the other, where it started, because I started the exposure before I actually started moving the lens. So, you know, depending on when you want to do that, changes the way you're going to get that stuff. This one, I think, was Christmas lights, and but I don't really remember all of that stuff. It's just, you know, let me see what happens, you know. So that was definitely zoom. That was probably on my Nikon D5500. So that had to be several years ago. And I know that one was too. Again, this was just a Christmas lights on a tree in an RV park. And if I brought up the exposure on the left side over here, you'd probably see some of that. And there, where it was just kind of shadowed from the where the tree was, and it just gave a whole different effect on here. Same with this kind of a deal here.
That's cool.
And it almost looks like fireworks, but it really is just light that was there, and I just did a zoom on it. So, you know, and most of these ones we're looking at are pretty much nighttime. There'll be, I think some other ones will be daytime. And I don't remember which way that I zoomed this thing, but this was over in this area, whether you could see it or not, is where the face of the snowman was, or the thing was at Christmas time. And I think on that one, I tried using shutter or flash on the just as the exposure closes, just as the shutter closes, to try and get a different effect on that.
Yeah,
and I don't know.
I like the inventiveness of all of the stuff that you've been showing. That's really cool. You know, because again, it just, you know, to me, it kind of proves that you know, whether you know, I'm not saying that these do this or that, but I'm just saying that, you know, these are the things that you got to try in order to see what you can come up with. And sometimes, as I said before, it just spurs you on to something else. And that's one of the cool things about doing sometimes these self-assignments. Sometimes these self-assignments can even lead to work, you know. Go figure, you know, might actually make some money off of them, you know, things like that. Yeah. That's really cool. I like that one a lot. That one's again, I love the effect of that. That's nice.
Yeah, I know that one was on my D5500, and probably one of the earlier exposures. And that bush or tree basically had one of those light nets on it at Christmas time.
Right.
And I looked at it and I says, I think that'll work out pretty good. And I just, set it up and focused as best I could, and then just twisted the lens. And I don't remember that I tried a bunch of different things. I think I just did it and said, oh, that's cool, and went on to the next one.
Oh,
but,
cool.
You get almost anything you want. This is a park model there. This is all in Sarasota.
Cool.
That might have been near the same thing, but just a different zoom.
Yeah, I like this more than I like the other one because it's what you're more focused in on that type of thing. Yeah, no, that's
right.
That's really abstract, and I don't know, maybe it's slightly pornographic. I'm not sure. Maybe that's the way my brain goes.
Maybe your brain goes. The reason this one was even, I took it, was we had a camera club in the park that we're at. We were supposed to get a picture with colors and have yellow and red or orange and blue.
Right.
And I said, that's pretty plain, I mean, yeah, big deal. And I said, what if I kick this up? So when I showed that to the group, it was like, what'd you do that for?
Yeah, that's cool. All right.
This was just a flower along the way, and I focused as much as I could on the point of it there, and then just did a little bit of a zoom. The different, same picture, speeder zoom, faster zoom, maybe start at a different point too.
Cool. All right. Hey, sorry if we anybody else got anything that they want to say or anything like that tonight? Anybody have any ideas
these
about
next couple of, yeah, this is a circular.
That's more of the twisty stuff. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that one was at the Corning Museum.
Right.
That one was there also. And it was, I could take pictures of the interior of the gift shop, but that's not very exciting. So I decided there's the gift shop, but given that a little bit of a different look on there. And I didn't have an ND filter with me, so I had to crank it up, as low as ISO I could get, and the highest shutter or aperture. So that's about it there. If you can figure out how to get out of here.
Well, Donald, do you want me to extend my invitation, or do you want to leave it for the low light group?
That's fine. You can talk to it, but you can extend it now.
Well, basically on a work meeting, a marketing lady came in asking for stuff from my division. And basically, she showed me, she used to work in tourism for the state of New Mexico. And she showed me their website. And I found out that New Mexico has 7 different dark sites, certified dark sites. So this year we're coming kind of late, into the Milky Way season, but I want to extend for now the invitation for 2023 season. If we put a group together, I'll love to, go and shoot the Milky Way in some of those places with you guys. So start planning a field trip to the west.
I like that. I think that's definitely a doable thing. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely. I think the first site that appears on the tourism website is it has an extinct volcano in it, so you can shoot from the rim or from the bottom and so on. So it will be pretty cool compositions.
Cool. That does sound exciting. I like that idea. Cool beans. Does anybody have any suggestions for the next topic for the braided photo group? No.
Hmm.
I was thinking of something about with dealing with. We've kind of done the gamut with depth of field and some of the shutter speed stuff, but you know, somebody was asking me recently about focus stacking. So I think what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of a talk about focus stacking next time we do this. So that way we have so there'll be a little bit of that. But I'm not quite sure what the theme should be. You're trying to push the gamut. There's tons of self-assignment stuff you could try and do. And maybe I'll just leave it as an open theme. But one of the things that that a lot of photographers suggest is being able to go out there and shoot one thing 30 different ways. Or another thing to do is to go out and shoot, look for a variety of different letters out there, not just the letters like by the city, but maybe like a tree that looks like an A, or an X, or try to find a Q in nature. That would be the thing. That type of stuff. You know what I mean? So that might be something that maybe I'll do something like that. Try to find maybe not spell your name, but maybe your nickname, first 3 or 4 letters or something like that. I kind of like that idea. What do you guys think?
That would be cool. That would be interesting.
Or am I
particular color?
Huh?
A specific color. A specific color is another thing that you could do.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, just photograph something.
I played with was,
yeah.
I think the focus stack self-assignment will be interesting as well. And people can try a bunch of different stuff and so on and see how it goes.
All right. Well, then I think that's what we'll do. We'll just do this as a focus stack assignment. For those who are not familiar with that type of thing, focus stack is where you actually shoot a variety of different pictures at different, you lock the camera down and you change the focus incrementally. So, and then what you do is in programs like Photoshop, or some cameras have it already built in where it will combine all those pictures so you get more sharper images. This is how a lot of macro photographers work, is with that type of stuff, is focus stacking. Because the thing is, we got to remember with depth of field is that the closer I get, the depth of field gets narrower and narrower and narrower. So what happens is, as I get closer to my subject, that area of focus goes right around this, my subject gets smaller and smaller and smaller the closer I get. Even if you say change your aperture to the highest f-stop setting, there's a number of things that can happen. One, you got to shoot at a much slower shutter speed, get more chance of motion blur, or the fact that you are to keep pumping up the ISO. So the way other photographers have gotten around that was they would just stack the images. So they take one picture close, one picture focused close, one picture a little bit in between, and one picture at the other end of the extreme of the subject. And that way they can combine all that stuff. And it's easier to do it if you can lock it down, but I've seen people do it with things in motion, and it's kind of interesting too on its own little thing. But the thing is that it's kind of a fun thing to do, at least for me it is. Again, I'm a big photo nerd, so I'm assuming that's why you guys are here. You're all photo nerds too. But I'll put some other links in and talk more about the focus stacking. If you're not comfortable with Photoshop or whatever, I'll also include links for how to do it too. It's not that hard to do, really. You just got it. The hard part is finding your subject and then photographing it in that manner. That's really the hardest thing to do. Other than that, because the software pretty much does most of the work for you as far as that goes.
Actually, here are a couple of pointers, so you don't make the mistakes that have gone through. Make sure you keep your speed and aperture kind of constant, and then you just move the focus and try to take the pictures as close together as possible in a sense of time. I'm recalling here when we did the Bradenton walk, and we went to the Tropicana train tracks. And some of the pictures, I took a bunch of them. I couldn't use them because the light had changed so much that as you started to put the stack together, it looked kind of funky right away. It's like, okay, you have an area that is in lighter than the other one and so on. So I have to discard a bunch of pictures. But for the self-assignment, let's try for those of us that have played with the technique a little bit more, let's try to do more pictures in the stack.
Okay.
As a challenge, you know.
All right. So for those who've done it before, maybe you want to do like a 12, 15 picture stack.
Then you have to go crazy. There you go. Fantastic. Yeah.
And everybody else, no matter, just at least a 3 picture stack. Yeah, make it that way, because the idea is you don't need to go nuts and do 15 pictures or 20 pictures. You know, there's plenty of reasons why you want to do this, especially in macro. In macro, it's more common to shoot 15 to 20 pictures than it is in landscape. Landscape, it's easier to do 4 or 5 and get away with it than it is for anything else. But as I said, I'll put a couple more things in the description for all that stuff.
Yeah. Actually, in landscape Photoshop, you might give them 5 and it will discard, you know, 2 pictures because you already covered that focal length, well, that depth with some other pictures. So.
All right, cool beans. Well, thank you guys very much. Thanks you. I like that idea. We'll keep the alphabet one for later.
That's cool. That's cool.
But you know, people can. You keep in mind, there's nothing that says you can't combine these ideas and you know, focus stack your own letters if you want to do that. All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Does anybody else have any questions? I know I talked to Gail earlier in private chat, and I think that's about it. I don't think I missed anything else. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. I hope you guys got some stuff out of it, and I hope it helps you guys out. As I said, I'm going to post this video on my YouTube channel. I'm not going to do it tonight, but what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of editing to cut out some of the slow bits, you know, like me hunting for a key. No one wants to. Where's the any key? I can't find the any key anywhere, you know. Where's the here button? I can't find the here button. So yeah, stuff like that. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. Hope you guys again enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward to seeing you guys out there. Again, if you guys got inspired and want to go shoot some of the stuff, by all means, post it on in the meetup group. You can always, if you join the meetup group, it doesn't cost you anything. You can make your own little photo album, and then you can link it, say, hey, everybody, look at me, you know, stuff like that. Or you got an Instagram page, let me know, and we can always share that with everybody next time around. So again, thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing some of your work out there. All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys.
See you guys.
As always, I look forward to seeing everybody's results. Be safe, be well, and I hope you all take some really pretty pictures. I really appreciate the time that you've all taken to spend with me here, and like I said, thank you so much.